And listening to everybody. Actually, I want to totally change my questions, but I'll keep it to what it is. And so this is a question to Professor Peterson. Since you said that trying to improve things, that about how things will go terribly wrong, and even when you have good conditions, is it easier for things to go wrong than things to go right? But the question is to you, why are conservatives called all kinds of names demeaning humanity, vandalized, or what do they go? Vandalized, harassed, and simply just because they're cautious? And so I'll break it down real simpler. Because if I wore, so I wouldn't do it, but what if I were to wear a Trump hat? How many people would punch me? How many people would be, see, I was in American politics for 3 years. My dad, he's a lobbyist in New York and Washington, D.C. So what if I wore a Trump hat? How would you respond in this room? How many people would respond in this room? That's my question. How would you respond if I wore a Trump hat? Professor Peterson.
First question. First question. I think you've made history there. I don't think anyone's actually acted out their question quite that way.
Well, the first thing is,
I'll come to you at the end if you don't mind, Jordan. I'd like to hear from Van on this. I mean, we sort of touched on this before, but there's a sense among Conservatives that, and if you did wear a Trump hat, that you would be howled down and maltreated. That's what the point is. Do you think that's correct?
I think that, you know, if you make a statement, you open yourself up to criticism. It's very interesting to hear people talk about free speech and a need for free speech that implicitly denies the free speech of other people to respond to that. You know, if you were wearing a Trump hat in my company, I would leave. I'm not interested in Trump hat beliefs or Trump hatism. And that is an act of free speech as much as anything else. I think when people, you know, it's a new experience for a lot of Conservatives to be criticised, you know, to not be part of the, dominant culture anymore. And the idea, you know, this manifestation of these, you know, socialist, green, feminists, like the Greens only poll 8%. Like this is not a mass movement of people. The fundamental lesson here for everybody, and I say this as much to myself as to anybody else, the internet is not society. And how people behave on the internet is not how we behave in our homes. It's not how we behave in our workplaces. It's not how we behave in the street. And to take as a representative sample of anything, what happens on the internet is the literal modern definition of madness.
Alex Hall.
Well, look, if I was critiquing your performance, I'd just suggest that you should have brought out the cap at the end and put it on. That would have added to it. Look, I'd say the problem is in the world today, I agree with you. I think if you did have your cap on, I have no problem with Van leaving. But in America... I didn't mean it like that. That came out wrong. It's just real live television. I'm sorry.
I can't wait till the election, Alex.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean it that way. I meant I have no problem with someone leaving, but the problem is that we saw in the US a young boy who was wearing the cap was attacked, and then he was portrayed as a perpetrator of violence until it was all corrected. And in the United States, which is supposed to be a bastion of free speech, I think it's sad today that people feel the need to do physical violence or to immediately respond to seeing a supporter of Donald Trump by attacking them. I think
Trump supporters speeding up black protesters.
Well, I don't believe there's any evidence of that.
Okay, we're running out of time, guys.
Maybe you should look at the internet, Alex.
I have to allow everyone to speak. And sorry, we're just about out of time. You want to finish your point quickly?
No. Well, look, I think you're right to raise it. It's a problem in the West today. People are shouting. The Prime Minister talks about this. The shouting in Canberra. He doesn't mean the politicians. He means the whole shouty political class, where the public switch off from it because they're not listening and they're shouting at each other.
Terry.
I mean, the Prime Minister doesn't need a microphone. He's that loud in Parliament, let's be honest. I don't think he should be talking about shouting. But to your point, I think that if you wore a Trump hat, nobody would punch you here. Everyone is listening to each other. And if I wore a pro-choice T-shirt, nobody would punch me here. Everyone's listening to each other respectfully. And if someone else was here wearing a hijab, then nobody would tell them, take it off and let me set it on fire. But these things, and that happened in my electorate to a woman wearing a hijab once. It was a terrible, terrible situation. So we know that there are situations where we can have meaningful, respectful disagreement and debate. And what we all need to do is be better at that. I think that's just a fact. But we also need to not assume that everybody else is personally victimising us for our beliefs all the time. Like, what I'm hearing from you guys is that a lot of people in this audience feel personally victimised by feminism. I don't feel personally victimised by anti-racist movements, even though I'm a white person, because I know that it's not about me personally or what I've done. It's about trying to change structures so that people get more freedom and more equality in our society. And so if we could all stop taking everything so personally and just listen a bit more, then I think we'll do a little better.
Catherine.
Beaten up by because what I believe, actually I've been beaten up by my faith. I'm not having a lot of ideas and everything. Because of my value system, I've been beaten up, not because I was vulgar to somebody, but because things that I wore, people actually beat me up for it.
Okay, all right, we'll take that as a comment. Thank you very much. Catherine.
Maybe trying to end it on a slightly lighter note. If you wore a Trump cap, I wouldn't see it from here, which is see the previous answer about age of panel and why I didn't play big bash league cricket in the women's league. Eyes aren't what they used to be. But look, I think it's all been said. If that were to happen, it would be reprehensible.
Yeah.
I suspect in Australia more trans women are bashed for presenting in their affirmed gender than males wearing Trump hats, but I could be wrong, and fact check it if you wish. But I would, if you wore a Trump hat, it wouldn't bother me in the slightest, I can assure you. I'm the last person who's going to upbraid someone about their choice of...
Jordan Peterson, we'll give you the last word as your international guest.
Well, 50% of the Americans voted for Trump, approximately, which has been about the same, right, for the last 4 or 5 elections. It's pretty much a 50-50 split. It seems to me that there's no excuse whatsoever for vilifying someone for wearing a piece of clothing that indicates alignment with, well, in this particular situation, with the elected majority. And it does happen, and it's appalling. And I think mostly it's a consequence of a very small number of very well-organized, very radical people who have far more power for reasons that have a fair bit to do with the universities than they should. However, having said that, I would say the Trump types and the Republicans in the US are doing a pretty good job of hanging on to their fair share of power, and that my observation in the US is that the political system there is actually quite nicely balanced. And so despite the fact that, you've run into personal trouble for the sorts of things that you're describing, the political debate between the right and the left, which is a very important debate, seems to be moving forward in a manner that indicates the fundamental robustness of the institutions of democracy in the United States. And I think that's the case in most of the Western world. So I don't think that there's any reason to despair on a broader scale, even though you may have encountered some things that were quite nasty personally.
We'll end on that optimistic note. That's all we have time for tonight. Please thank our panel: Catherine McGregor, Jordan Peterson, Terry Butler, Alex Hawke and Van Batten.